Stop everything you are doing right now, because a man who allegedly pawned his wife's jewelry while she was sitting in a prison cell just stood in front of the entire world and demanded half of everything she built with her own two hands. Half of the stages, half of the network, half of the comeback that the whole culture watched her claw back from nothing. And the wildest part? He did not whisper it in a lawyer's office. The truth about Papoose did not leak through some court document that nobody was supposed to see. It came out of Remy Ma's own mouth, on a stage, with a microphone hot, seconds before she performed one of the most disrespectful diss records of the year. One sentence. That is all it took. One sentence from Remy Ma, and suddenly 2 years of confusion. 2 years of, why is this divorce taking so long? 2 years of watching Papoose play the devoted husband on the internet. All of it snapped into focus like a picture finally coming into frame. And baby, once you see what is actually in that picture, the pawn tickets, the gambling, the hidden properties, the Claressa Shields contradiction, the tax debt under a whole government name most of y'all have never even heard said out loud. You cannot unsee it. So stay right here. Do not click off, because by the end of this video you are going to understand exactly why this man will not sign those papers, and it has nothing to do with love. Welcome back to the channel, y'all. If this is your first time pulling up, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications, because we do not miss over here. And before we get into all of this, I need y'all to do one thing for me. Drop down in the comments right now and answer this one question, because it is the question at the center of this entire story. Do you believe Papoose ever loved Remy Ma? Or do you think she was an investment from day one? Think about it before you answer, because by the time we finish laying out the receipts, some of y'all are going to want to come back and change what you wrote. Now let's get into it. So here is what happened. For anybody who has been living under a rock, Remy Ma was booked to perform, and before she even got into the music, she grabbed the mic and addressed the crowd. Now mind you, this was not an interview. This was not a sit-down where a publicist could clean it up later. This was Remy Ma, live, in front of a building full of people with their phones out, and she told that crowd, plain as day, that she would be single when a certain somebody stops asking for half. Then she went straight into the diss record. Straight into it. No hesitation, no stutter, no publicist running to the stage. She said it the same way she raps, loud, direct, and aimed. And the crowd did not gasp. That is the part everybody needs to sit with. The crowd did not react like they were hearing breaking news. The crowd reacted like a jury finally hearing the prosecution say the thing they had all been thinking for 2 years. It was not shock in that building. It was confirmation. Now let's unpack what that one sentence actually means, because it is doing a lot more work than people realize. Remy Ma did not say the divorce is stuck because of feelings. She did not say it is stuck because of their daughter. She did not say it is stuck because of lawyers or paperwork or scheduling. She pointed at one thing and one thing only. Money. A demand for half. That means this entire divorce, this whole drawn-out, years-long legal marathon, is not being held up by a broken heart. It is being held up by a price tag. Papoose is not refusing to let go of the marriage. Papoose is refusing to let go of the money. And once you understand that, every single thing this man has done publicly for the last 2 years gets a whole new coat of paint. The devoted captions, the anniversary energy, the "that's still my wife" interviews. All of it reads different when you realize the signature at the bottom of the divorce papers has a dollar amount attached to it. And here is the part that makes it genuinely sinister, y'all. Because according to everything that has been reported, Remy Ma did not go into this divorce swinging. She drew up paperwork where she asked for nothing. Let me say that again so it lands the way it needs to land. The woman who had every legal and moral right to come for everything. The woman who allegedly watched her jewelry get walked into pawn shops while she was incarcerated. The woman who allegedly had properties bought with her money that she did not even know existed. That woman sat down and said, "I want nothing from you. Sign the papers. Walk away. We are done." That is grace. That is restraint on a level most human beings could not even fake. And what did Papoose do with that grace? He looked at the woman offering him a clean exit, an exit he arguably did not deserve, and he said no. "I want half." She offered freedom with zero attachment. He countered with a demand for 50% of her life's work. Baby, that exchange right there is the entire marriage summarized in 2 sentences. One of them came to the table with open hands. The other one came with open palms. And eventually a judge is going to look at the financial record of this marriage and decide which one of those two people sounds like a partner and which one sounds like a dependent. Now, before we go any further, we have to talk about the contradiction, because there is a contradiction sitting in the middle of this story, so big you could park a tour bus in it. Claressa Shields went on The Breakfast Club, the biggest morning show in the culture, and told the world that Papoose pays for everything. The mortgage, the car, the flights, everything. She painted this man as a provider, as a man with motion, as a man who wakes up every day and handles business. Okay, fine. But at the exact same time, at the very same moment in history, Papoose is sitting in divorce proceedings telling a court that he is entitled to half of what Remy Ma earns. Y'all, both of those things cannot be true at the same time. It is mathematically impossible. If Papoose is swimming in enough money to cover a whole other woman's lifestyle, mortgage and all, then why does he need half of his estranged wife's income to survive? And if he genuinely needs half of her money just to stay afloat, then where exactly is the money coming from to keep Claressa Shields' lights on? Pick one, because you cannot be the bank and the bailout at the same time. One of those stories is a costume, and I think we all know which one. And when you pull on that thread, the whole sweater comes apart. Because here is what the people who have actually looked at the structure are saying. Papoose is not paying Claressa Shields' bills with Papoose's money. Papoose is paying Claressa Shields' bills with Claressa Shields' money. He positioned himself as her manager. He sits between her and her own income. Money comes in from her fights, from her endorsements, from her name, and it flows through a structure he controls before it ever touches her account. He takes his piece off the top, and then he turns around and pays her bills with what is left, and she gets on national radio and calls him a provider. That is not a provider, y'all. That is a toll booth. That is a man standing on a bridge he did not build, charging people to cross their own road. Tasha K said it plain. That $8 million deal, everybody was celebrating? The word is that it was credit, not cash. It was not $8 million sitting in an account. It was a number built on Claressa Shields' future fights, future punches, future blood. Which means every time that woman steps into a ring and risks her body, a percentage of that sacrifice flows through a company that Papoose controls. She called it an $8 million blessing. Baby, that is not a blessing. That is a pipeline. And Claressa Shields is the raw material moving through it. Now let's get into the audacity of the demand itself, because demanding half would be bold from any man. From this man? From this particular financial history? It is almost impressive, because this is not a man who walked into this marriage and matched Remy Ma dollar for dollar. This is the same man who allegedly took Remy Ma's jewelry to pawn shops while she was behind bars. The same man who allegedly drained her accounts while she could not touch her own money. The same man who allegedly bought properties with her earnings, properties she says she never saw, never signed for, never even knew existed. The same man who, by multiple accounts, could not keep the lights paid. The same man with a gambling problem losing money in casinos while his wife was locked up building nothing but time. And after all of that, after every single one of those alleged acts, this man looked at the divorce table and said, half. Half of what? Half of the money he allegedly spent? Half of the career he did not perform? Half of the stages he never stood on as the headliner? Make it make sense. And I need y'all to really hear this next part, because this is where it goes from audacious to almost unbelievable. The properties. Think about the properties for a second. If the allegations are true, he took her money earned by her voice and her pen, while she was incarcerated and unable to monitor her own finances, and he converted it into real estate that she did not know about. And now, years later, he is in court demanding half of her estate in the divorce. Do the math on what that actually is. That is allegedly spending someone's money and then filing paperwork to get a return on the money you spent. That is not a divorce settlement demand. That is asking for double on something that was never yours to begin with. And the devastating part is that she could fight this. She could come for every pawned piece, every hidden deed, every casino dollar, every cent allegedly siphoned while she was counting days in a cell. She has the receipts. She has reportedly shown receipts, jewelry and all. She could make this the ugliest financial war hip-hop has ever seen. And instead she said, I want nothing. Just sign. Just let me go. And Papoose took that mercy, that once-in-a-lifetime mercy, and he weaponized it. He read her grace as weakness, and answered it with a demand. Now we have to go back. We have to go back to the prison years, because that is where this entire story was actually written, and I do not think people are ready to look at those years with clear eyes. Everybody remembers the narrative. Papoose, the devoted husband. Papoose, visiting Remy Ma every single day. Papoose, holding down the most loyal love story hip-hop had ever seen. The culture ate it up. Blogs wrote poetry about it. It became the standard, ride-or-die goals, the man who waits. And I am not going to sit here and tell you what was in that man's heart, because nobody on this earth can do that. But I am going to ask you to think about something. Think about who Remy Ma was before she went in. One of the most successful female rappers alive. A woman with a platinum resume, a machine behind her, and a name that moved units. Now think about what happens to artists like that when they go through adversity and come out the other side. They do not come back smaller. They come back with a story. They come back with hunger. They come back with the entire internet rooting for them. The comeback of a woman like Remy Ma was never a gamble. It was a guarantee with a date attached. So now ask yourself the uncomfortable question. When Papoose was making those visits every single day, was he visiting his wife, or was he visiting his future? Because an investor checks on his portfolio every day too. That does not mean he loves the stock. It means he is monitoring the return. He wanted to be positioned, perfectly positioned, as the man who stayed, the man who waited, the man who would be standing right there in the frame when the comeback cameras started flashing, so that when the world asked who deserves credit for her resurrection, his face would already be in the picture. And look at what the comeback actually became. Remy Ma came home and built an empire, a network, Lifetime movies, chart placements, festival stages, talk show deals in the pipeline, the glow up of the decade. And now that the return has finally matured, now that the investment is paying out in every direction, here comes Papoose, asking for his cut. Half, to be specific. Half of the glow up he positioned himself next to. And her answer, delivered on a stage in front of the world, is that the return on that investment is zero because the investment was never love. You do not get dividends from a marriage you spent like a checking account. And here is where the story stops being about the past and starts being a warning. Because there is a woman named Claressa Shields who needs to hear every single word of this. There is an old record, a genuine classic, and the hook goes, "If you did it to her, you will do it to me." That song was written for exactly this situation, and somebody needs to play it in Claressa Shields' ears on repeat. Look at the structure, y'all. Do not look at the romance. Look at the structure. Remy Ma was the breadwinner. Claressa Shields is the breadwinner. Same man, same arrangement, same playbook. Different woman at the center of it. A man with no independent income to speak of, attaching himself to a woman whose body and talent generate the money, positioning himself as the manager, the partner, the provider, while every dollar actually flows uphill from her labor. Claressa Shields is out here paying, in every sense of the word, for a married man to stand next to her and look like somebody. And the receipts on why he needs that arrangement are getting harder and harder to ignore. Because now we have to say the government name. Willie Mackie. That is the name on the documents. And according to reporting that has been circulating, including a federal tax lien making the rounds, that name allegedly has not paid taxes in 13 years. 13. The number attached to it is over $100,000 owed to the federal government. Now stop and do the math with me, because the math is the whole story. Papoose allegedly owes the government 6 figures under the name Willie Mackie. Papoose is allegedly covering Claressa Shields' entire lifestyle. And Papoose is simultaneously in court demanding half of Remy Ma's earnings. Those 3 things cannot coexist on one man's honest income. There is no version of that math that works unless the money being spent is coming out of somebody else's account. Which means Claressa Shields is the account. And Remy Ma? Remy Ma is the backup plan. The second account. The one he is trying to keep legally attached to his name in case the first one ever runs dry. That is not a husband, y'all. That is not a boyfriend. That is a man running a 2-account system, and both accounts have a woman's name on them and a ring or a contract keeping him connected to the routing number. Now, in the interest of keeping it all the way honest, we have to address the one card Papoose has been playing in his own defense, because he has been playing it loudly. Papoose went on record and said that he wrote 90% of the rhymes that came out of Remy Ma's mouth. His words. He described the whole system, said he used to write rhymes in his head when he was younger, then started writing them in his email drafts as he got older, and claimed that if you sat next to him with his iPhone, you could type in any word from one of her songs and the entire verse would come up in his drafts. And then, in the very same breath, he said this, and I need y'all to catch it. He said he never asked for a penny. He never asked for credit. Because she was his wife. Because he just wanted to see her win. Now hold on. Hold all the way on. Because that statement was supposed to make him look noble, and for about 5 minutes, it did. But read it again, slowly, next to everything else we now know. You cannot stand in front of the world and say, I never asked for a penny. I never asked for credit. She was my wife. I just wanted to see her win, and then turn around and hold a divorce hostage over half of her earnings. Those are not two different men talking. That is one man, talking out of both sides of his mouth, depending on which audience is listening. When the cameras want a love story, he is the selfless ghostwriter husband who wanted nothing. When the lawyers are in the room, he wants half of everything. Baby, you do not get to be the martyr in the interviews and the plaintiff in the paperwork. And let me add this. Even if every word of the ghostwriting claim is true, even if he wrote every syllable, he told you himself what the terms were. No penny. No credit. A gift from a husband to a wife. A gift does not come with an invoice 20 years later. You cannot ungift something because the marriage went left. That is not how gifts work, and it is definitely not how love works. And since we are talking about what men do and do not get to do in these situations, let's put this in its full cultural context, because she is not the first woman to live this movie, and she made it clear on that stage that she refuses to be the next casualty of it. The culture has watched this exact story over and over again. We watched Sherry Shepherd get dragged through a financial war by a man who saw her success as his settlement. We watched Britney Spears spend years funding the lifestyle of a man whose entire career became being Britney Spears' ex-husband. We watched the Queen Mary J. Blige pay a man who turned managing her into a full-time extraction business, and Mary had to literally sing her way out from under it. There is a whole graveyard of famous women who loved men who treated the marriage like a startup and the divorce like an exit strategy. And Remy Ma stood on that stage and said, not me. Not this time. Not this woman. That is why the crowd went up the way it did. They were not just cheering a lyric. They were cheering a refusal. And here is a detail that tells you everything about who wants this divorce finished and who does not. It has been reported that Remy Ma offered to pay for Papoose's divorce lawyer. Read that again. The woman is so ready to be free that she offered to fund the legal representation of the man fighting her. Have you ever in your life heard of somebody so desperate to leave a situation that they will pay the other side's attorney just to get it moving? That is not the behavior of somebody hiding money or playing games. That is the behavior of a person who has calculated the cost of her freedom and decided that whatever it costs, it is worth it. And the man still did not sign. The man still held the line at half. When somebody offers to pay your lawyer and you still will not put your name on the paper, you are not negotiating a divorce. You are negotiating a ransom. But wait, because we need to go deeper than the gossip. We need to zoom all the way out and look at the pattern, because the pattern is the part that should genuinely scare every successful woman watching this video. What we are looking at with Papoose is not random. It is not one man's personal failure. It is a blueprint, and it has a shape, and once I lay the shape out for you, you are going to start seeing it everywhere. Step 1. Find a woman whose talent generates real money, and attach yourself to her early, before the world fully knows her name, so that later you can claim you were there from the beginning. Step 2. Make yourself indispensable in ways that are emotional and visible, but financially untraceable. Be the shoulder. Be the driver. Be the manager. Be the man in the background of every photo, so when the money conversation finally comes, your face is already woven into the highlight reel. Step 3. Survive the hard years on her dime. Ride out the prison sentence. Ride out the lean season. Ride out whatever storm comes, because every storm she survives makes her more valuable on the other side. And step 4. When the relationship breaks, convert all of that proximity into a number. Half. Not what you put in. Not what you earned. Half of what she is worth, because the law lets you ask. Y'all, that is not a love story gone wrong. That is a long con with a honeymoon phase. And what makes Papoose's version of the blueprint so much bolder than most is the timing of the pivot. Most men running this play at least wait until the paperwork is done before they set up the next situation. Papoose did not even wait for the ink. He is still legally married, still actively negotiating half of her estate, and he is already fully installed in the next structure, managing the next champion, standing in the next press conference, smiling next to the next $8 million announcement. He did not close one chapter before opening the next. He is running both at the same time, one in the courtroom and one in the boxing ring, and the only thing connecting them is him, standing in the middle, with his hand in the middle of two women's money. I have covered a lot of celebrity divorces on this channel, y'all. A lot. And I have never seen somebody run the next play while the referee is still watching the current one. That is a level of confidence that only comes from one place. It comes from never having faced a consequence. And that, more than the money, more than the taxes, more than the pawn shops, is what this story is really about. A man who has operated for years on the belief that the women in his life exist to finance him, and that nobody will ever do the math out loud. Well, baby, Remy Ma just did the math out loud. On a stage. Into a microphone. And now we are all doing it with her. And y'all, let's talk about the discipline of Remy Ma in this whole situation, because it does not get enough respect. For 2 years, this woman had the receipts. 2 years of pawn slips. 2 years of hidden property records. 2 years of watching her name get used in devotion captions while her divorce sat in a drawer and signed. Most people would have cracked in month 3. Most people would have been on live every week, crying, venting, giving the blogs a new headline every Monday. Remy Ma did none of that. She worked. She raised her daughter. She built. She let Papoose have the microphone. Let him have the narrative. Let him tell anybody who would listen that he wrote her rhymes and held her down. And she just kept stacking wins in silence. And then, when she finally decided to speak, she did not write a long caption. She did not leak to a blogger. She picked the biggest weapon in her arsenal, a live stage and a hot crowd. And she detonated one sentence that did more damage than 2 years of his interviews combined. That is not just a rapper, y'all. That is a strategist. That is a woman who understands that timing is a weapon and silence is leverage, and she used both of them perfectly. Papoose spent 2 years winning the PR war. Remy Ma ended it in 11 seconds. Now here is the question that is going to split this comment section clean in half, so I am just going to put it on the table. The ghostwriting claim. Let's say, just for argument, that everything Papoose said is true and he really did write the bulk of her catalog. Does that entitle him to half? Some of y'all are going to say yes, that writing is labor, that labor built the catalog, and the catalog built the fortune. And I hear that. But here is the counter, and it is a strong one. He told us the terms himself. No penny asked. No credit asked. A gift for his wife. You do not get to donate your work. Watch it succeed for 20 years. And then show up at the divorce with your hand out claiming authorship. The music industry is full of writers who sold their verses outright, and not one of them gets to come back 2 decades later and reclaim the royalties because the marriage went bad. If Papoose wrote those rhymes as a husband's gift, then the gift is given, and it stays given. And if he wrote those rhymes as a business arrangement, then where was the paperwork? Where was the publishing split? Where was the credit line? A man with a real claim documents it. A man with a story waits for the divorce to tell it. Y'all tell me in the comments which one you think we are looking at, because I already know where I land. The pen was a gift or the pen was a job. It cannot be a gift on the interview circuit and a job in the courtroom. And one more thing before we close the books on this, because it matters for where this story goes next. There is reportedly a talk show in development with Remy Ma's name on it. Think about what that means. This woman is about to have a daily platform, a microphone, a desk, and absolutely nothing left to lose. Every episode is a potential headline. Every monologue is a potential courtroom exhibit in the court of public opinion. His best-case scenario was always a quiet divorce, a quiet check, and a quiet transition into the Claressa Shields era. That scenario died on that stage. From here on out, every move he makes happens under a spotlight that Remy Ma controls, because she is the one with the platforms, the fan base, and now, the sympathy of the entire culture. He demanded half, and what he actually bought himself was a permanent seat in the court of public opinion, with Remy Ma as the judge, the jury, and the host of the show everybody will be watching. If I were advising that man, and clearly nobody is, I would tell him to find that pen, sign those papers, and disappear into whatever is left of his reputation. Because the longer this goes, the worse the math gets, and baby, The math was never on his side to begin with. And then there is the part of this story that does not get said loudly enough, the part that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with character. The child. Remy Ma and Papoose have a young daughter together, and by all accounts, the consistent presence in that little girl's life has been her mother. While Papoose has been publicly building a whole new life with Claressa Shields, red carpets, press conferences, celebration posts, his youngest child has been growing up with a father whose face shows up more on blogs than at home. And yet this same man wants the court to hand him half of the money earned by the woman who carried that child, who raised that child, who performed on stages at night, and still showed up as a mother in the morning. He wants half of the reward for a household he was not running. He wants half of the earnings of the parent who actually parented. When you stack it all up, the pawn shops, the properties, the gambling, the tax lien, the pipeline running through another woman's career, and now the custody picture, you stop asking why Remy Ma said what she said on that stage. You start asking what took her so long. Because here is the truth that ties this whole thing together, and I want y'all to sit with it. A man who actually built something in a marriage never has to demand half. Think about that. A man with a documented contribution, a man whose money is in the foundation, whose name is on the wins, whose sweat is in the bricks, that man walks into a courtroom calm, because the record speaks for him. The judge can see what he built. The only man who has to stand up and loudly demand half is the man who already knows what the financial record shows. And what it shows, allegedly, is a one-way street. Money flowing out of her career and into his hands, and nothing flowing back. She performed while he allegedly gambled. She built a network while he allegedly bought secret properties with her earnings. She wrote and recorded while her jewelry was allegedly being walked into pawn shops. She went to prison, came home, and rebuilt her entire life from the ground up, and he stood next to every chapter of that story, and now he is trying to legally own half of the book. Remy Ma said it herself before the music even started. She will be single when he stops asking for half. That is not a lyric, y'all. That is a diagnosis. And let's talk about what she has actually been doing while all of this plays out, because the contrast is the story. While Papoose has been managing photo ops, Remy Ma has been managing an empire. She came home from a situation that ends most careers, and she did not just recover, she expanded. Television, film, festivals, new music that actually charts, a network carrying her name, a talk show in development. She rebuilt her brand so completely that the culture almost forgot she was ever gone. And she did it while raising her daughter, while carrying a divorce on her back, while the man she once loved allegedly treated her prime years like an open register. That is not just a comeback. That is one of the great resilience stories in hip-hop history, and it is being written by a woman who still cannot get a signature on a piece of paper because the man on the other side of the table thinks her freedom has a price. Remy Ma is not stuck in this marriage because she lost. Remy Ma is stuck in this marriage because she won, and somebody wants a trophy for a race they watched from the stands. Now let's be fair for 1 second, because I always try to give both sides before I give my verdict. Is there a world where Papoose is simply exercising his legal rights? Sure. Divorce law in this country allows spouses to make claims, and plenty of people make them. And Papoose did visit that prison, and Papoose did stand next to Remy Ma publicly for years. And there are people who will tell you that kind of presence has value. But here is where that argument falls apart for me. Presence is not contribution when presence is also positioning. Loyalty is not loyalty when it comes with an invoice at the end. And support is not support when the supporter allegedly spent the supported person's money while she could not see her own statements. If the allegations are even half true, and remember, she has reportedly shown pawn receipts, offered to pay his legal fees just to get the divorce done, and put the hidden properties on the record, then this was never a partnership with a rough patch. This was an extraction with a wedding ring on it. An extraction does not get half. Extraction gets exposed. So where does this go from here? Because that is the real question. Remy Ma has now said the quiet part on a stage, in front of cameras, before a diss record, which means the strategy of silence is over. When a woman like Remy Ma takes a private negotiation public, that is not frustration. That is a flare. That is her telling the world, and more importantly telling the courtroom of public opinion, exactly who has been holding the pen hostage. And public pressure changes divorce proceedings, y'all. It changes sponsorships, it changes bookings, it changes the temperature around every person attached to the story. Claressa Shields is now attached to a man whose name is trending next to the words tax lien, pawn shop, and half. Every brand looking at Claressa Shields is now also looking at her manager boyfriend's paperwork. Every fight she wins now comes with a comment section asking where the money goes. That is the part of this that cannot be unmanaged, no matter how the contracts are structured. The story is out. Remy Ma made sure of that. One sentence, on one stage, and the whole house of cards is standing in the wind. And I keep coming back to that crowd, y'all. I keep coming back to the fact that nobody gasped. Because that tells you the most important thing in this entire story. The streets already knew. The culture had already done the math. 2 years of watching this man post devotion while refusing to sign papers had already taught everybody the lesson, and her sentence was just the period at the end of it. That is what makes this moment different from every other celebrity divorce headline. This was not a revelation dropped on an unsuspecting public. This was a confirmation delivered to a public that had been waiting for the woman herself to say it out loud. And now that she has, there is no putting it back. Every interview Papoose does from this point forward gets filtered through one question. Why won't you sign? Every red carpet with Claressa Shields gets filtered through another one. Whose money is this? And every day that divorce stays unsigned, the answer gets louder. So let's bring this all the way home. Remy Ma offered a man who allegedly spent her prison years treating her money like his personal allowance a clean, quiet, cost-free exit. Nothing demanded, nothing pursued, just a signature. And that man looked at the most generous offer he will ever receive in his life and answered with a demand for half of everything she built, everything she performed for, everything she bled for. Meanwhile, he is allegedly managing another champion's career, living off the structure of her success, carrying a 6-figure tax debt under the name Willie Mackie, and presenting himself to the world as a provider. Baby, the math is not mateing. It has never mateed, and now, thanks to one sentence on one stage, the whole world has a calculator. Remy Ma said she will be single when he stops asking for half, which means the timeline of this divorce was never in the court's hands. It is in the hands of a man who has to decide what he wants more, his freedom or her fortune. And everything we have seen for 2 years tells us exactly which one he is choosing. Because if there is one thing this entire saga proves, it is that paper trails do not lie, even when people do. Pawn tickets have dates. Property deeds have signatures. Tax liens have amounts. And stage microphones have cameras pointed at them. Every piece of this story is documented somewhere. And sooner or later, all of those documents end up in the same room, in front of the same judge, telling the same story. And that story has one sentence at the center of it. She offered nothing. He demanded half. Everything else is just receipts proving which one of those two people was telling the truth. Now I need to hear from y'all, and I mean it, because this comment section is about to be a courtroom of its own. Question number 1. She asked for nothing after everything that was allegedly done to her, and Papoose answered by demanding half after allegedly contributing nothing but problems. So do you think Remy Ma ever gets her freedom? Or is that signature going to end up costing her half of everything she rebuilt? And question number 2, and this one is for the ages. Papoose is running the exact same play with Claressa Shields that he allegedly ran with Remy Ma, the manager position, the controlled money, the provider costume. So at what point does Claressa Shields realize she is not watching somebody else's divorce? She is watching a preview of her own. Drop your answers below, and do not hold back, because I read every single comment and the wildest ones are getting pinned. If you made it all the way to the end of this one, you are real, and I will see you in the next video, because if you think this story is crazy, wait until you hear what is coming out about the money trail next. Trust me, you are going to want those notifications on.